This is a 74 bus engine with the stock carbs that are not on it right now. And a 72 is just like this, but the manifolds are shorter, and it uses an oil bath air cleaner. So these two pipes, they're the same, but they're just a little differently configured because they're fitting a lower manifold outlet or inlet. And this, it doesn't go under this, it goes next to it, I think. But they're basically the same thing. So you got this thing as a this is a balance tube, and this is really the balance tube, this one in front, because it just connects to this pipe right here on the manifold, one on each side, and then it's basically a T, and this part goes to the servo. That's on this. Now on a 72, I think that this T part, this goes forward on this side. It's on the other side, but other than that, pretty much the same thing. And then this is acting as a breather, but it's really a feed for a mixture that comes through the left carburetor, that screw on top. I'm sure you know what that is, that thing. And it feeds mixture into this. It's idle mixture. So it feeds it, goes into here, and it goes to both sides, and it gives them idle mixture. And then each carburetor has a pilot jet itself and an adjustment screw. And so that's idle mixture. So you have basically 3 idle circuits. You got this one and one on each carburetor. So what I do is I make this go away. This is plugged on the inside, but just simply screwing the air screw all the way in will do the same thing. Or you can plug the inlet pipe on the top of the carb. So, and again, on a 74, these are tall, and on a 72, they're only about this tall. These are about that tall. And so that's the difference. And then these are going to fit with the plastic air cleaner, and the short ones are for the metal 72 only air cleaner, the oil bath air cleaner. So basically what you do if you want to get these carburetors to work, sometimes you just put them back on and rebuild them or do whatever, like these things, and it just won't work. Square back, maybe it just doesn't run well, it's got a hesitation, it's soggy, and everything works. The accelerator pump works, everything's by the book, and it just doesn't work. Well, these things come with the 26 millimeter Venturi, all type 4 buses. They come with the 24, but sometimes they won't run right unless you put a 23 millimeter Venturi in it. And see the different Venturis? The older squarebacks had smaller ones. The Brazilian ones from CB, I think they're 21.5. And then this one right here, this is a 23, and this is probably a 26 from a bus. But they come in several sizes. So if your car doesn't run right, you might need a smaller Venturi. I really suggest staying away from the ICTs and the center-mounted Weber, especially. I mean, you know, it's just don't do it. But anyway, so these carburetors on these are designed so that because of this hole, see this hole right here? That's a Type 4 bus. That's a square back, no hole. Because the Type 4 bus idles at 5 degrees retarded, well, any car, if you say you set the timing at 10 degrees and retard it to positive, advanced, and you retard it to 5, so you pass 0, you got 10 advanced, you go past 0 while you're adjusting it and set it at 5. That's where these idle. And that's like if you took just a stock 67 bug with one vacuum hose and you tried to set it at 5 degrees retarded, it would idle really slow. Any car that you retard the timing on, when you do it, the idle speed will drop. The reason the timing is set at 5 degrees on these is to make it pass smog at idle. Because the hydrocarbons are lower as you retard the timing, I guess to a point. I've never checked it, but I read this and I believe it. At 5 degrees, the hydrocarbons are lower than they are. 5 degrees retarded, they're lower than they would be at 10, the hydrocarbons. That's why they did this. And so you want to make that go away. So you can put a 009 in your car and adjust the idle just like a square back and not worry about this stuff. And so the way you do it is you solder this hole up, and then here's what you think, well, you're going to turn these into a square back carburetor. So what's different? Well, the only thing that's different On these two carbs, other than this one, as you can see, it's got this thing that's plugged up with epoxy. There's a couple of places for screws to put something on. Some of them have a metal and electric. A little box here with a wire going to it. This kind of thing. But the main thing that's different, see, that's a 2mm drill bit right there, okay? And see this hole in the square back? That's 2mm. But you see the hole in this Type 4 bus one? That's about 1.5 millimeters. Some of them are actually smaller than that. So if you want to turn the bus carburetor into a square back, that's step one. You got to drill out this hole to 2mm, and you have to, solder this hole shut, or you can use the square back carburetor throttle body. Now, this is bigger, this diameter, these two, but it won't make any difference as long as it's not smaller than the small diameter Venturi, which it's not going to be. They work fine like this, and you just adjust it right here. I don't know if the screw's in this, but you just adjust it just like you would, this thing. The same deal, just like this. Like these are square. See, this one's got square back throttle bodies, just so I could use these, right? And the thing about solder, you have to use a torch. You have to use a oxyacetylene or something to get this hot enough. Don't melt it, and you want to make it flow good so you see it on both sides. If this falls off, it's not going to hurt anything. Like nozzles, these things, they fall off and they go in the motor and they just leave. They go away and the car runs funny, but it didn't hurt anything. But there wasn't an instance where one of these things fell. I guess it wasn't a bug. The accelerator nozzle fell in the engine. The guy took the heads off, and that's what was laying there, keep it from turning around. So if you have a car that runs good today and then it won't start tomorrow, just see if the nozzle's still there. And if it isn't, that's probably what it is. And maybe 24 volts will, just push it, smash it, and make it go away. It'll go out the exhaust valve. Remember, it's brass. It can't hurt nothing. But that car wouldn't turn. It was locked up. Nobody thought of trying to put 24 volts to it, Turn it backwards as far as you can and then turn it on, and it might just take care of the problem. But he ended up, having the heads off, at least one of them. Maybe he got lucky, pulled the right one off first. So if you have a soggy off idle, you're probably going to need a smaller Venturi. Now, I have a bus I did this 2 years ago. It had big Webers, and I put these on it, and it ran fine on 26s. But I have a Type 4 bug engine in a bug, and it won't run without, it runs with 23s. That's it. But I did a dual port bug engine about a year ago, and it ran with 26s because, you try the biggest one first, and it ran great with 26s. So, but, theoretically, like a 67 square back by the book, 24 should work. But it could have just easily ended up being 23s. Or, I've never had to put anything smaller than 23 in anything. But I built a 2-liter once, and before I put the carburetors on the car, I turned the 26s, because it's a 2-liter Type 4, I turned them out to like as big as I could make them and still have a curve inside. And the thing wouldn't run for shit, and I ended up putting 23s, if not 24s in it. Now, a few years ago, a guy had a square back, and it was a 1500S, so he found some 1500S carbs. And see this? They have that. That's a powered fuel jet. See, there's the tube that feeds it. There's a little tiny, that's the jet for this guy. Little tiny hole here. Air's rushing into the motor, and it pulls fuel up this pipe. See, it sits like this in the car, and it pulls it out of this right here. And that's the accelerator pump nozzle. So when I got the thing running, it had like the wrong springs in here. They were too fat, so this thing wouldn't squeeze anything because the spring was too long. They were NOS in the box. They had varying castings, but these were different. Left and right, the castings were different. They look like a later one. If you've seen the real late ones, it's got like a little ledge here, this kind of thing. But they took this screw. So anyway, you get the thing running, finally get all this stuff straightened out. You hold it at 1500 RPM, it's smoking like crazy. Dual port engine in this, 1500S car and these NOS carbs. And so what it was, see this guy, I plugged this up and the problem went away. And I think I had to put 23s in it too to get it to run. So those old ones have, the S's have this. So the 1.8 I told you with the 23s, it's in the Type 4 engine in a bug, that thing wouldn't go fast. I went nuts with that thing. I started off with these all, like probably 23s probably. And I put the world's smallest air correction jet, which is an 80, I think, out of a dual port bug. You can pull the emulsion tube off and use it for an air correction jet. Still, at high RPM, it wouldn't go past about 50 or 55. It'd start popping and snapping. I didn't know what to do with it. So I put ICTs on it. Still ran pretty shitty. And it had an NOS cam, and it had AMC heads, 1.8 new heads. With their valve sizes, which are wrong for a carbureted 1.8. They're too small. They're for a fuel-injected 1.8. So there's only 2 years for those heads, 1.8. So they just decided, we'll just make them all fuel-injected valve size. But anyway, so it wouldn't run, like I said, air correction jet, small Venturi, couldn't fix it. And finally, I was home on a Sunday wondering about things, and I'd put these on, built a linkage for it, wouldn't run right. Bought the ICTs, built a linkage for them. Remember, it's a Type 4 engine and a bug anyway, it's a long story, but had to make the linkage. Still wouldn't work, and I just said, I'm going to put these back on. I built the linkage again because I destroyed it for the ICTs, the one that was made for these, a little bit different. And I put them on, the same thing. I go, I don't know what to do, and then I thought, what about this? And so if you look at the Type 4 carb top, which, there it is. They're exactly the same as this Type 3 carb top, pretty much. They have a different choke pull-off. This choke housing is not removable. This one is removable. You can put these in a bug, but you have to cut this off with a hacksaw. Just get rid of it. Pull the choke flap out, put Allen screws in the end, and plug. Just get rid of it. If you do this right, you won't even need it. I guarantee it. So, see this? Right here. Remember I said I was home on a Sunday, and I go, I'm going to put those in. Well, I couldn't change the tops because I already had the link. I'm using this for the linkage of my Type 4 bug engine in a bug. I'm using this for my homemade linkage. I'm using these bolts. Use studs if you're doing this, even if it's just normal stock bus. Studs. Then these things will probably never strip. That's what they used to do. The bolts come loose, they strip, and you're screwed. If you put a stud in, they'll stay tight. And studs don't typically strip because you bond them in there with Loctite, maybe damage the threads a little so they'll bite. I'd said that. Just hit them with a hammer and screw them in so they're real tight. Interference fit. So anyway, you see right there, that little bump? You see it? Right? This thing right there, see that little place, that little depression right there? Well, that's a non-drilled hole for this, see? So I drilled it, and I put these in, and this hole is already here. You just have to, this hole meets that hole when you drill through, and the problem went away. But so that's how you do it. And then, so when you do those things, particularly you solder the hole shut, you get your mixture, you can put this on the car with this, because I'm using this top, so I can use this. And this screws all the way in. And the hose coming off of here is plugged up. Okay? And then it's probably got, I don't know what size they are, 55 or 60, maybe 50 pilot jets. When you buy pilot jets, you need to get a reamer set, and then you just buy 45s. And then if 45 is too small, you make it 40, you can make it 50 or whatever you want. And just buy 45s instead of buying like a 55 and all the ones that various ones that they sell, and they're kind of expensive. This makes it easier to deal with. These things, people want to rebush them all the time. Well, I've seen a brand new one of these things from the dealer, and they're not exactly tight. They wiggle. And what I've noticed is that if you get one of these things that's done, a rebuilt one, and they've done a beautiful job, a 45 might be too big, because this thing gets its air from this, right? But if there's a leak here, some of this air is going in the motor too, so this is pulling less fuel than it would be normally. But what I'm trying to say is, they make if you plug this, if this has zero air leak, you might need a 40 for one of these. I'm serious. So, I think it's an engineered air leak, because like I said, when they were new, they wiggled. They weren't exactly snug. You would, if you felt one and your eyes were closed, you'd think it was used. If somebody handed you an NOS one of these and you wiggled it and your eyes were closed, you'd think it was used. That's how they were. So what I also do is, I don't know if you can see it. When you operate when you check your output, people get all worried about how many cc's their output is on these things. Well, the way that I determine what the output is, I just go 1001, and that's enough, Because if you have too much gas coming out of your accelerator pump, you get a thing called a rich dump. And on a VW, at least in my experience, if you're going, say, 55 in a split window bus, and you're cruising, you just floor it, it goes, it jerks once. That's probably what it is. Too much gas coming out of the accelerator pump. So you can reduce it by adjusting it. But first of all, here's what this one looks like. Let's see if you can see it. Let's see. This thing empty. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I don't have a tripod. And if I did, it would just have to, I don't know how to edit. So I just try to, I can't piece things together. I just can't figure it out. But anyway, it's hard to see it. But anyway, about 1001 is enough. And if it's a lot and you can't get rid of it, see, the best way to do it is, you can back it off as far as you can. But see what I've done. There goes the gas. See these extra washers in here? Maybe I got lucky, but basically what you can do, if you make this longer by about 4 millimeters, which is kind of hard to do, then you can, and you put this back together, you'll find that the pump won't squirt anything. Nothing comes out. And that's good, because maybe it'll run fine if nothing comes out. Maybe it doesn't need any gas, because I've seen them run fine without it. So, so what you do is, you see this one, all these, maybe I did lengthen these. It doesn't look like it, but see all these washers? These are to increase the output, probably because I've changed the diaphragm. So you can buy the diaphragms that come in the kit are junk, but you can buy Solex diaphragms. If you look around, just the diaphragm, it'll be for $1. But to compensate, you have to do something like this. You might have to do that to get it to work, okay? But I've had others, maybe because they had bus diaphragms proper, or type 3 diaphragms, I guess, because that little metal thing varies. And so I've actually taken these things and welded them and made them, or not welded them, but brazed, or I don't remember exactly how I did it, but I made them about 4 millimeters longer. And then I could adjust it so there was 0 coming out of the nozzle. And then you just start stacking washers here until you get gas, until it starts working. 'Cause the washers here increase it. Okay, they give it a longer stroke in here. So the chokes, I take them out, see, no choke. And on these, the early ones, you have to, if you're putting this in a bug, you got to cut them off. You can get these two things to go in a bug if you use like a real square back manifold. The problem is finding a linkage that'll work. The linkage they sell now, if you buy one of those linkage, center and pull for their little Solexes that are similar to these, you're going to spend 2 days studying geometry trying to get that thing to work. The center section, it just doesn't work because it's made for push. It pushes instead of pulls or something, and they have taller manifolds. And so those, you'll spend days trying to get that. You can do it. You just got to be able to cut, weld, braze it, because you're going to do it over again. So just braze. But anyway, the linkage, that's the hard part. Stock manifold, original manifolds, they used to make a linkage center pull. You just put it in, it would work. But there's 0 out there that will work. The levers are too long on the center section, and I think it pushes instead of pulls or something. But I bought one. I thought I'd use that. It says it for these, this comes with their kit. And it's like, forget it. It took me like 2 days to get it to work. But anyway, the choke is gone because it flows better without it. And I just, there's an Allen there, a little Allen screw, you don't even have to tap it. You just buy it like an SAE one. It'll screw right into the hole. And you get a little more flow. And you get rid of the flap and you get rid of this because these things break. And if you have a customer that has these and this thing fails and he drives around with the thing on for a couple months, he'll have an oil burn, or maybe he'll fill his engine up with gas. And if you jet these things right, you'll barely notice you won't think you need a choke. You will not need one. And then this thing here too screws up, if you can see it. See that little thing right there that sticks out? See it? That little ridge? That's the stop for the choke flap. And when they break, the choke, instead of being vertical when it's off, it goes cockeyed a little to the wrong direction, and it can, hurt gas mileage. And, it's not good for the rings having too much fuel go in. And then on this thing too, this doesn't have to do anything anymore, but it's got to be there. And see, look, I took this thing out. Oh, this is the used one, yeah. I thought this was my car. I go, this is not something you want to be loose. And when I put the manifolds on, there's a substance, it's like silicone called the right stuff. You can use high temp silicone, but this does better. I think it seems more solid when it's dry. And you put the stuff on, you put some on the gasket, you put the gasket on, you put some on the manifold, you put the manifold on, you snug it up, and then you just leave it for a couple hours and then tighten it. It'll never leak. I took these off because I had to put a clutch in this thing. And so, well, it was really more of the gas gauge, but the clutch it's got a few miles on it. So I thought I'd put a clutch disc in it. And while I go, well, I'm going to take the carbs off because it'll be easier. But see, this is the thing. If you have a brand new car today and you check the emissions, they're going to be something, like hardly anything, but they're readable. And you check them again in like a year or two, they'll be higher, and there's nothing wrong with it. And what is wrong with it is got a multitude of little teensy-weensy air leaks. These are facts. You can do research. You'll find out that is a fact. And so the upside to having to put a clutch in is I got to take the carbs off because they've been on there for about 30,000 miles. I haven't touched these things. And just reseal the manifolds, and your engine will last longer. That's one of the problems with the center-mounted Weber. I think they have pretty weak flanges on the intake. And so, they tend to leak, and, people don't notice it. And, you want a perfect seal. Anywhere the air can get in that it shouldn't, you got to make it seal. The gaskets for this, let's see, where are those things? See, these are the plastic things. I put my own gasket material on it, and I glue it on with this stuff, This is my favorite glue. I use it for a lot of stuff. But anyway, and the black isn't the same thing. It's different when it's dry. It's brittle, more brittle than this. But anyway, you just glue this stuff on. Some nice gasket. You buy new ones of these, paper is probably falling off anyway. But you can glue this on, and then you open it up a little in the middle, so the glue will dry, and poke a hole where the studs go through so it can dry better. And then when it's all over, when it's dry, you just take a file and just hit the sides. Just hit the sides of the edge, and the file will look like you bought it like this. It'll make a perfect gasket, and you file the inside. And and as far as the conversioning goes, so you got the thing on the car, you don't know what Venturi you need yet. You just put the one that's supposed to be on the car. You can try a 26 on a dual port bug engine or a square back. Try a 26 and see what happens, but you get the thing so it's stable, idling. Then you find out if it's going to run terrible, because the first step is idling. And so you may have to use, you just figure out which Venturi makes it so that when you screw the mixture screw all the way in, it almost dies. And when you screw it out, it gets too rich and starts getting a little lumpy, and there's a perfect spot in between. That's when you know this thing is right. Okay? In other words, you just make it screw all the way in too lean, it doesn't idle good. Too far out, it starts getting a little rough. It doesn't seem as smooth. And in between is a perfect spot. That's so if it's to get that, you might have to make it bigger, because if you have one where you screw it out and it doesn't really change in both directions to too lean or too rich, then you need a bigger pilot jet. And sometimes, so anyway, that's about all I know. But again, you get rid of all this, like this stuff that comes on a 73 bus. It's got a wire going to this. Some of these things have like 6 connections. Like you got this, then this maybe 3 on the other side. There's like maybe you might have one that you have to keep if you have an automatic. I don't know if you want to put these on it. Well, it should work on automatic. A long time ago, I knew somebody who put these things on a square back from a kit, and it wouldn't run for nothing. It was an automatic. And I don't know what I ended up doing, but I got it working. But there was a hill like right across the street from where I happened to live, this driveway that was really steep, and he drove his square back down. It wouldn't go back out. It was an automatic. It was in about 1980. And it was just not a very good job, and it was just about the carbs weren't jetted right or something. I don't know what it did with it, but we did get it to work. So, but just saying, like on an automatic bus, there's a micro switch on one side for the kickdown, but you try to get rid of all these wires because sometimes these things fall off and then they short out and they make a fire. So the other thing is the normal pilot jet, there's a normal pilot jet, okay? See how small it is? And here we have, this thing probably weighs about 5 times as much as a pilot jet, okay? And it's got a little tiny hole. So they designed this carburetor, this jet, and like who knows how long they've been using. Like a 52 bug probably takes this jet. And then they go, let's put this in the same hole. And so it's too big. They come loose and they mess up the hole. They make the hole elongated. And then they don't stay tight because the tip of this thing seats in the bottom of the hole. It's not just screwing it in tight like a bolt. I mean, when this thing, the threads could stick out. If it was tight and the threads are showing, it doesn't matter as long as this is mated. And of course, they're not so far out that it's just gases pouring out of here. But this has to mate. So if you have these carbs and they have an insert, well, the insert isn't going to be centered well, and this probably isn't going to mate. This is the same fitting basically as gas fitting for a stove. It's the same thing. If you look at a gas stove fitting, if you ever attached a gas stove to the wall, it's going to look a lot like this. So, and again, these are from a bug probably, because you can buy these new, but just for a bug, and they're Solex, because the stuff that comes in the kits is junk. I had a 36 and you couldn't get the flat spot to go away, and finally found some NOS. I bought a couple of these for NOS for 28 PSI, and the thing just, the accelerator pump just blew it. It squirted the fuel up like it looked like an umbrella. If you've ever seen a 36 horse squirt, the accelerator pump function right, that's what should just come up, maybe this high or something, and it just goes up in the air, and then it just like if you pointed a water hose up in the air, and it would just and perfectly centered, it's just perfectly perpendicular to the ground. It looked like it would look like an umbrella coming down, the shape of it, the cross section. So the floats, see the type 4s have this thing in the bottom. Let's see, flashlight. See how the bottom is? It's got that trough, so it's got the bottom is higher. And so it uses this float. See how it's flat? And then a square back uses this, see? And so the square back has a deeper, it doesn't have that thing. So otherwise, they're pretty much the same. They're exactly the same thing. See, accelerator pump thing, accelerator pump, air correction jet, and then in here is the emulsion tube, which you can't change. Now, all the German ones have the same thing. At least there's a number here, and they're all the same. If you buy Brazilian ones, you can buy these and use them, but you can use some of it. Like you could buy the kit just for the Venturi and the brand new throttle body that will work on these. But this is different. There's a different number. And I can promise you that the car will go, as an example, a 67 bus with a dual port engine will go 50 miles an hour in third gear with the German carbs. If you put those Brazilian ones they make on it, it'll go 40. That's it. That's it for third. It just won't do it. And the only thing that you can see, which there is no magic here, they're identical, is this is different. Now I haven't pulled it out because it's not meant to come out, But sometimes this plug pops out. I've seen them come out, but I wouldn't know how to make it come out. If you really wanted it to come out, you'd heat this with a torch. It might be peen, but you could check for peening and try to clean it up, and then just heat it and slam it. And then maybe if you had a German one that got ran over by a truck, 2 of them, and then you bought new Brazilian ones, maybe you could put this German one and the Brazilian one. But I can tell you there's a number here. It's on this plug or right next to it, and the Brazilian ones are different. So, start out with 26s and work your way up. But I know you got to have a lathe, You got to have a lathe if you want to make them bigger, or if you have, and you might have to eat some, but you got to be careful when you're turning them. You don't want to like go, oh, well, if you have a 21 point, I think there's 21.5s. I think the Brazilian ones, if you had that and you go, I'm going to make it bigger, and you make it like 26, and then it's too big, So you got to go easy, but it's complicated. See, I used to buy these things at swap meets for like $5, and I had all kinds of Venturis. I still do. So I got a whole bunch of these things, But I don't know anybody that'll sell you the Venturis by themselves. I asked CB and they said no. But they will, they do have the carburetors and, and the kit, but they just don't have a linkage that'll work. Because, again, the manifold's different. So they're higher. It just doesn't work. Again, it took me a day, maybe 2 days. I've done it twice to get those things to work with these carburetors. You used to be able to buy a linkage that you just put on, and they'd attach to these with the stock manifolds. And every now and then on the Samba, if you look under linkage and all, just general parts, you might be able to find, all you need is a center section. That's the problem, is the center section. And then you just buy the new crap that they make now, which is half Chinese and half German, I got a feeling. And one of them is anyway that says it's German. And then you use their rods, and their pull rods, and then you're all right. You would have a nice center. But that's the problem. Nobody makes a center for these. And these things run really good. They don't get great mileage, but they get better mileage than fuel injection, which is like terrible. And they have 0 flat spot. The nozzle a lot of this, I can't tell you how to, it's all in the book, the basic stuff. But the nozzle, it's typically going to point, right by the crack in the flap, right near the flap. So, and then see 74, this is longer. And see, I put these on, and this is different for 73 and 4. This part right here comes out way out. And so I needed to do that, but I wanted to use these just because I like the nozzles. And so I actually made this thing, I made one of these things longer. It's pretty close to the other side. Yeah, see the same thing. Yeah, this one's fixed up too. And then this is called a choke pull-off. What this thing does, and this early one, it's got bugs have this too, the old bugs. It's got a piston. And so basically when the engine's cold, the choke is on, it's closed somewhat. It's almost, closed. But when you rev it, this thing pulls, the diaphragm on this gets deflected, and it pushes the choke in the direction of open or in hot position. And then when you let off on the fuel, the suction is relieved from this diaphragm, from this thing, and it makes the choke go back to about where it was. And this one works the same way. It's just got a piston, which these things fall out, And again, I get rid of the choke, so I just cut this right here. See, the later ones, they come off. And the super late but square back ones come off too. But, and then these, I say on my 1.8 conversion, I left these on it so I could use these studs to mount my homemade linkage. And this guy, just make sure this one is really tight, because I think if I remember right, it's practically impossible to really tighten this thing really good while it's in the car. Yeah, you see why? Because see how this is? See the nut? There's carburetor right here. So you have to go from this side, which is firewall, to do it. So you can barely do it. So you can use vice grips. You could put a bolt in it, but I guess I didn't have one. But make sure this is tight, you know, put it in really tight. You can even Loctite it because you'll never have to take it out. See, the way this thing works is when it's running, this dumb idle, this is for smog again. This, you know, when the air is being sucked through that pipe I showed you on the motor, it's coming through the air cleaner into this. That's a fuel line. It goes inside here and it goes this way. The engine's sucking it in. And while it's passing through here, it's sucking fuel up into this air and feeding the engine this idle mixture. It works the same way as the pipe for this, except it's only for idle. Apparently they've designed it so there's enough air going through here to pull fuel out of this, because this thing won't pull fuel unless you get to about 1500 RPM or so. Otherwise, there's just not enough pull for anything to come out. And this combines with the fuel coming through this. That's your main. Like bugs have this. They all have it. And, you know, the squarebacks, though, again, they decided they need this too. They're adding, they're giving, it's like having two main jets in a sense. It's like you got this one and that one. Now, the air correction jets, when you go fast, at slower speed, I think this is why this happens. You have a car that runs really good, and then you get up to about 50, and it just won't go any faster, and it's not this. You don't do this until a last resort. I only had to do it once. But you start going real fast, and it starts missing because the air correction jet's too big. So think of this. What's coming out of here is coming through this hole and through the main jet. So imagine I plug or there's usually a jet here. Let's just say I plug the jet up with my finger, and the only thing I'm going to get is gas. And if I plug up the main jet with something, and leave this open, the only thing that's going to go through there is air. So by making this smaller, you get more gas coming from the main jet. But it might run fine up to be like 50 miles an hour and doesn't want to go any faster. It happens on ICTs. And finally, what I think is happening is that when the engine's trying to pull a lot of fuel through the main jet, it's cavitating. And so you have to compensate by putting a smaller one of these in. And the smallest one's an 80. And these things usually run good with like a 130 main and about a 140 air with any Venturi. And the reason the old ones, they worked the other way, because some of those things had a 240 air, an old squareback, like this one probably did, or this guy. This probably had a 240 air or something like that in it, but it had a real small Venturi, and there were 1500 engine with a dome piston. But again, this 74 bus comes with 26 millimeter Venturis, and sometimes they just don't run with it. They just don't work. It doesn't work. And so they end up with ICTs or a center mounted Weber. But if you're dedicated, I gave you as much information as I can give you, but you can make these things run like a brand new car with fuel injection. They're so smooth. They don't die. These things have been on here for 30,000 miles. I haven't touched them. And again, you want to get this Solex, diaphragm, and, you'll figure it out. You might have to make this longer, but I just can't remember. I've done it though. I made them longer, and there's nothing like a new throttle body. So if you don't, if you want to spend some money, you could buy new fakes. You get yourself a small Venturi, and you're going to get these. These are going to be Solexes because that's what they are. And you get nice new throttle body, and you can use the top if you want to, or but you can't. You don't want to use the bottom because of the emulsion tube, which you'd have to change it. I've never tried it. I suggest using a German bottom, but you'll be real happy with these. They don't have any. They just run flawlessly. Solex makes good carbs, and look at all this. You've got all these. These are all variables. X, Y, Z. All that stuff. So that's it. That's all I know.